Start with Christian. Christian has apparently quietly retired, or been retired by WWE, may be more accurate. He may not have had a choice in the matter. Edge and Christian were the guest hosts on Raw Monday, and in passing, Jerry Lawler on commentary mentioned that Christian was retired, and then Paul Heyman brought it up in his promo that it was due to repeated concussions. That was the first official confirmation I had heard that the guy was retired, even though one of you, I forgot who, pointed out that Randy Orton apparently mentioned, he slipped in a little mention about Christian being retired on the Peep Show that Christian did on the Night of Champions pre-show. I don't remember any of this, but I didn't see that mentioned anywhere at the time, so I was not the only one who was caught off guard by hearing these comments on Monday. And I felt like I should be more surprised than I was by how casually they threw that out there, almost like it was an afterthought. This guy who's been part of their roster dating back to 1998. Now he did take a few years off. He was gone for about 4 years. He went to go work for TNA. But his WWE career dates back to the Attitude Era. But I wasn't. I wasn't surprised at all when you remember the stories of what Vince McMahon supposedly thinks of the guy. The guy's retirement deserved more than just a passing mention. And I was reminded of a column that I did last year for the Layfield Report on why Christian was WWE's most underappreciated talent. Not underrated, because that's something completely different, but underappreciated in that you don't know what you got till it's gone. I wrote the article, it was after, I went back and I found it, and I wrote it after a Memphis street fight that Christian had on Raw with Sheamus last year that I thought was very entertaining. And I wrote about how the guy is a hell of a lot closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning of it. Yet he continues to have consistently good matches, week after week, with whoever he steps in the ring with. The match in Memphis was awesome. Both guys were applauded when it was over. Yet week after week, the commentators, and JBL in particular, no doubt at the behest of the Irish madman in his ear, would talk about nothing but how ugly Christian is and how he should have a blue dot over his face. And so here we are months later. The guy finally is retired, and true to form, WWE continues to disrespect him by their handling of this whole thing. And it just feels wrong. It's wrong when you consider what an asset this guy has been to the company for years, especially when he came back as part of the ECW brand in 2009. They had him working matches with a young Jack Swagger, Ezekiel Jackson. Ezekiel Jackson had the best matches of his career with Christian. The best matches I've ever seen the guy have in any promotion were with Christian. That's not by accident. Christian had a lot to do with elevating those guys, especially Swagger at that time, and grooming them for bigger things down the road. That was his role. It was the role that Benoit probably would have had he not killed himself. The grizzled vet there to bring some legitimacy to the brand and to work with the younger guys on the roster. That was his role. The other thing that made Christian so damn good was that he could play whatever role you needed him to. He was an awesome babyface in peril, and he was an even better slimy, whiny heel. He could play either one to a hilt. I think people forget what a great babyface Christian was. He would always find a way to get the crowd behind him and into the near falls, even if it was slow going and the match was kind of slow and boring. I mean, depending on who he was in the ring with, by the end, it's kind of like Dolph Ziggler now. Dolph Ziggler can be in kind of a boring match, but by the end, the people are into the near falls, they're going crazy. Christian had that ability. He was that kind of performer. Not everybody can do that. It takes a special talent, it takes a special connection to the fans to be able to pull that out of the fans, and he was able to do that. And I ended the column that I did for the Layfield Report by saying, let's not overlook what the man brings to the table and acknowledge how much that he's going to be sorely missed once he hangs up the tights. And hopefully WWE can connect the dots and do the same, so long as one of those dots isn't blue. I thought that was a clever way to end the column. But that's how I ended it. And here we are now almost a year later after I wrote that, and I'm sorry to say they failed to do that. But that doesn't mean that we all can't give the guy his props. His feud with Randy Orton was the feud of the year in 2011. His comedy, unlike others on the roster, was always entertaining, always got a laugh out of me. I mean, put it this way. I've laughed out loud more times at Christian's jokes than I have John Cena's. I mean, that's a feud that WWE dropped the ball on also back in '05, if you remember. Probably one of the reasons Christian left for TNA, too. I don't know if he's ever said that, but wouldn't surprise me if that was one of the things that led to him leaving. He saw the writing on the wall. He had this ready-made feud with John Cena that the people seemed to be into. You know, they had one or two promos on TV that were pretty entertaining back and forth. And Vince McMahon had so little faith in the guy that they just moved on. And they never really gave us that program between the two of them. And I'm sure that hurt him, and I'm sure that really made him realize, you know what, they don't see me on that level, then the hell with this. I'm going to go somewhere else, and I'm going to be a world champion there. And that's what he did. He went to TNA and became, I think, a two-time NWA world champion. Not that the NWA title has really meant anything in a couple of decades, but still, he went somewhere else and had some success for himself. But that's a feud that they definitely dropped the ball on, and yeah, that was back when Christian had Tomko in his corner as his bodyguard. It was really funny. I don't know. I don't know why they never took advantage of that. I've also been asked by email, you guys have emailed me a lot, what do I think are some of Christian's best matches that I could recommend that you go back and watch? You know, I thought about it, and you know, I didn't put a full list together in any kind of order. The matches that I think about when I think of Christian and some of the ones that I enjoyed the most, you have to go back to that tag team ladder match, No Mercy 99, Edge and Christian against the Hardys. That was the precursor to all of the TLC matches that would come later on. That was an awesome match, and unlike anything WWE had ever done before, like a tag team ladder match, we had never seen that before. That's a match worth going out of your way to see. The TLC matches, obviously, personally, my favorite, probably TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17. I enjoyed the hell out of TLC 3, which aired on SmackDown. They had Jericho and Benoit in there. Those probably are my two favorites. He had a match with Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 20 that doesn't get talked about a lot. That was the match where Trish turned heel, turned on Jericho, went with Christian. That was a pretty good match. There was an Intercontinental title ladder match on Raw. I want to say it was September of 2003. I sometimes get it confused with the ladder match that Eddie Guerrero had with RVD. But it was Christian RVD in a ladder match on Raw. Awesome match. Definitely go back and find that on YouTube, I guess, if you can, since it's not on the network. His return to ECW in 2009, you know, I remember being really bummed out by that because supposedly there was a plan for Christian to come back to be the one to turn on Jeff Hardy, who was the WWE champion at that time, and he was going to feud with Jeff Hardy, but then, you know, word leaked on the internet, and Vince freaked out, and he changed plans. He went with Matt Hardy, turning on his brother instead. And Christian was sent to the ECW brand, which was like the redheaded bastard child of WWE at that time. But he kind of made it his own. Again, working with guys like Swagger and Jackson. He had a lot of really good matches on that brand, and I can't tell you which one specific match to go back and find. I remember he had some really good matches with Jack Swagger. I don't know if any of them were on pay-per-view. They may have been. So I'd go back and try to find some of those. The matches with Randy Orton in 2011, they had so many of them. It did get tiring after a while, but I almost didn't mind it because those two guys, for example, unlike John Cena and Randy Orton, and they could talk about what great rivals they are all they want to. Just because you put two guys in the ring together 15 million times doesn't mean that they're storied rivals. I still maintain that Cena and Orton do not have good chemistry together. I don't care how many times you put them in the ring together. They're big stars, but that doesn't mean that they have good chemistry the way that John Cena and Edge had chemistry, the way that John Cena and CM Punk had chemistry, or the way that Christian and Randy Orton had chemistry. Orton had much better matches with Christian than he did John Cena. And the best ones, I think, the ones that I enjoyed the most, were probably that very first one on SmackDown, the one that pissed everybody off. It was a couple of days after Christian had won the world title from Del Rio at the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. He went on SmackDown, and they had Orton beat him right away and win the title. But that was actually a really great match, and the match they had, I think it was like a no DQ match at SummerSlam that year. Awesome match. Both of those matches I would highly recommend. As far as his TNA run, honestly, I wasn't really paying close attention to TNA at that time. I actually went to a couple of shows that had Christian in the main event against Kurt Angle. I'm sure Christian and Kurt Angle probably had some kick-ass matches. I just couldn't pinpoint one for you. I'm sure he had some great ones with AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, because those were the guys in the main event at that time. Christian, I'm sure, could have a great match with any of those guys. So when you really look at his body of work, it's something that you got to respect. I mean, the guy, maybe he wasn't, at the top of the heap, but he had a hell of a career for himself. And like I said earlier, I feel like he deserved better than just the passing mention on television. I never expected a guy like Christian to have like a retirement celebration like Ric Flair, even Edge. I remember when Edge retired, he did the speech on Raw, then he was on SmackDown, then he may have been on Raw, I don't remember. He was on television so many times. After a while, it's like, okay, we get the point, you're retired. Just, I don't know, give the guy a microphone, let him say a few words. I just feel like they could have done more. And so I wanted to do what they didn't do and say a few words about Christian. And I think he's still under contract to them for supposedly for like another year, so he's still with them. As far as the Hall of Fame goes, I've been asked that too. Do I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame? I think Edge already being in the Hall of Fame works against Christian. It'd be a lot easier to say, well, they'll put Edge and Christian in together because they were a great tag team and they're so linked. Edge is already in. I don't know that... Well, you know what? I do see Christian going in. I think Christian is a guy that was a big enough name in that era, and even in recent years, but like I said, he goes back to the Attitude Era, and they always glorify the Attitude Era. All the titles he won, all the big ladder matches that he was in, I think all those guys will eventually be in the Hall of Fame. The Dudley Boys will be in there, the Hardy Boys will be in there. You can't have the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge in the Hall of Fame at some point and not have Christian in there. I mean, you talk about a slap in the face. So yeah, I'm sure Christian will be in the Hall of Fame. I don't see there being any great rush to put him in. But yeah, I definitely think he'll get in there at some point, and deservedly so.